Hello and welcome everyone to a new Oxygen XML webinar. My name is Alim Belu and I will be your host for today's live event. I also need to mention that this webinar is the first in our new weekly series of live webinars that will be taking place every Wednesday at the same time, meaning 8 a.m. for US Pacific time, 11 a.m. for US Eastern time, and in Europe between 4 and 6 p.m. Today, we will be talking about improving the Oxygen authoring experience through custom actions. That's why we invited our colleague Alex Gitiano, development lead for the Oxygen authoring team, to tell us more. But before starting his presentation, I'll give you some useful information. All the webinars are recorded and so is this one. The recording will be made available on the event page from our site and on the Oxygen XML YouTube channel. Also, we invite you to ask us questions as we go using the questions panel from the GoToWebinar interface. With this being said, now I'll be giving the floor to Alex Gitiano. Hello, Alex.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for attending this webinar. The base idea behind it is that although we try to make the author mode as simple and as intuitive and as helpful as possible, the truth is that use cases and requirements differ from one company to the next. Because of that, we have a lot of extension points that one can use to fulfill those special needs. In today's webinar, we will focus on the author actions. Before we begin, a few words about regarding today's agenda. We will begin by a short overview of the author mode. We'll then talk about how to create your own author action, why it is a good idea to do that. We will explore the various options that we have to offer these actions at the right time and in the right place to make them as accessible and discoverable as possible to the users. And last, we will talk about how to share these author actions between frameworks. That being said, let's have a look at the author mode and talk a bit about content, content, and structure. So this is Oxygen's author mode. It is a visual rendering of an XML document in which the user focuses on the content while the tags are hidden. But if you know where to look, the context is always there, so you'll always know where you are. For example, on the toolbar here, you have this breadcrumb view that always shows you where you are. So in this case, I'm in a short description, which is in a topic. Now I'm in a paragraph, in a body, in a topic, and so on. Another context information while I move around the document are these location tooltips that also show me the same information. Here, for example, I'm between a short description and a body element. If you want more information about the context, you can always go on the toolbar and select between one of the various tags display mode. So for example, we can choose full tags, and now you'll have a tag for each element. If you want to know more about the context, about the structure. But I personally prefer to use a less intrusive way of rendering these tags with just this small icon here for inline elements. There's also an outline available if you want to browse the structure or again to find more information about the context. If you want to insert text, you just type it and it will get inserted. If you want to insert structure, then there are a couple of options available to you. If you press enter, you will see a little window that presents all the possible elements from your XML vocabulary. You can choose one. Don't worry if it's not valid at the current position that you are, because Oxygen will automatically search for the proper place for that document, for that element, and it will insert it there. So I was in a short description, but my paragraph was inserted in the body where the paragraph is permitted. Another option to insert structure is through an elements view. This one presents basically the same things you've seen in the content completion window, but in a window form. And last but not least, we have these author actions, which you can see here on the toolbar. So we have an author action that inserts a table, another one that inserts a list, let's say item 1. And if we want a new list item, we might use this other action here and say item 2, and so on. So these are the three ways through which you can insert structure in the document. Now, these author action, to make a little analogy, if we see all the possible elements in your XML vocabulary as pieces in a puzzle, creating the puzzle, the document, using content completion or the elements view would be like taking one piece at a time and putting it in the puzzle. An author action, on the other hand, is a way of grouping multiple pieces of the puzzle and create predefined blocks, and inserting these predefined blocks in one go instead of using all those little puzzle pieces. An author action, it's just a configuration. It is based on XPath expressions to activate various operations. Such operations might be to insert an XML fragment or to change an attribute. As a demonstration, let's create an action to insert a customized example section. You can see it as a real use case, because if I were to insert an example from the content completion window, you see that it just inserts an empty example element. So just this one little piece of a puzzle, and then I'll have to put inside another piece of the puzzle, the title, and so on and so on. So instead of doing all these steps, let's create an action that automatically inserts an example with a title and a code block, for example. Oopsie. To do that, I'll go to Options, Preferences, Document Type Association, and edit my document type or framework is this one, named Data Actions. Then I'll go to Author, Actions. In this table here, you'll see all the predefined author actions available in my framework. I will create a new one using this action below the table. Let's give it an ID, example, the same name. We'll put in some icons as well for it to look nice. Okay, they're around here somewhere. I'll use this code block icon. It's not perfect, but we'll know to recognize our example with it. So a large icon, a small icon. You'll see later on where they will be used. For the activation XPath, let's assume an additional situation. For example, a section is quite similar to an example, at least in the Data XML vocabulary that I'm using. So let's say that if I'm in a section, instead of inserting something new, I just want to rename the existing section in an example. For that, I will use this activation XPath and say if ancestor or self, it's a section. So if I'm somewhere inside a section, then I'll choose a proper operation, in this case, the rename element operation. The new element name will be example. And the element being renamed is this ancestor or self section. But if I'm not in such a particular context, I'll add a new operation. I'll leave the activation XPath blank so that it executes always. It's the default operation. And this time we will use an insert fragment operation. And the fragment being inserted is this one, example and title and the code block. Okay. Now we have our action, but how do we make it available for the users? So in this slide, I present a few of the default operations. There are quite a few of them. You can see all of them if you go inside our user guide on this page that I've put here on the bottom. But for example, we have a change attribute operation to change something to an attribute, insert fragment operation to insert new fragments, an operation to delete an element or to move an element, and so on. But now we were talking about putting the actions in the right place where a user might find it. So the first place would be on the toolbar, right? So let's do that. We will go to the toolbar tab here. On the right, we see the current form of our toolbar. On the left, we see all the available actions. So let's search for our example actions. And let's put it here in the toolbar and maybe put a separator after it to separate it from this other bold, italic, underline actions. Okay, we go back to the document, and now we see our action here on the toolbar. So if I click on it, let's activate the full text mode to better understand what's happening. We see that an example with fragment was inserted. But if we put a section, section title, maybe here is the content. If I'm somewhere inside this section and I click the same action, you notice that instead of inserting a new example block, the section was renamed in an example, right? So the first operation was activated through its XPath expression. Another place where we can put this action is in menus. So we have here this contextual menu, and then we have this main menu in the menu bar. These can be customized from the same place. So we have a menu tab and a contextual menu, and we can put actions in these places. But also we can put these actions inside the content completion window. And in our case, let's replace that basic example entry with our beta action. So we'll go here in the content completion tab. Again, on the left, we see all the defined actions. On the right, we see what we've added so far in the content completion. So let's search for our action. We click here to add it. A little configuration dialog is presented. We'll use the same display name. It will be a replacement for the entry with the same name from the content completion. We can make this replacement in the elements view or in other places, but for now, let's just leave it in the content completion window. And now, if I press enter again and write example, oops, let's see what I did wrong here. Whoops, it's the replacement for example, not element. Okay. Let's try again, example. This is our action. We can see it by its action. So when we invoke it, this entire fragment was inserted, our action was executed. Another interesting place where we can put this action is in the document itself. For example, let's say that we work in a list. We might want this action that inserts a new list item to be presented here at the end of this list item, because this is the place where I would expect to see something. Or for example, if I have a paragraph, I might want to see some actions that insert the most commonly used elements or markup inside the paragraph. So let's get these two use cases as a demonstration to demonstrate things. So let's bind this list item action at the end of our list item and a group of actions for a paragraph. Before doing that, I need to tell you that the author mode is driven by CSS rules. So the way it looks, the way it renders, it's all controlled by CSS rule. The CSS rules looks like this. It has a selector which matches to a particular element in our XML, in our document actually. So in this case, it will match any paragraph element. And then it has multiple declarations. A declaration is a property name, property value enumeration. So for example, here we tell that this element should be rendered as a block. It should have this particular margin, and this particular color should be used when rendering text. And why I'm showing you this is that through CSS rules, we can bind these author actions inside the document. So let's do just that. So first of all, in my document, in my framework directory, which is this one, I've linked it here in my project to be more accessible. I will create a new CSS file, but let's say custom. I will use this less extension. I will tell you further on why I've did that instead of putting CSS. So let's create it. And now we'll go to options, preferences, edit the document type configuration again, but this time on the CSS tab. And we will add a new entry pointing to this new CSS that we've created. we'll use the framework editor variable, and it's in the CSS directory, and it's custom.less. Okay, and now we can put CSS rules in here. To speed things up, I have these rules already prepared, so let's copy them one by one and present them. So this one, for example, matches on list item elements, and it says that after such a list item, it will leave a small margin, and this is an Oxygen button form control, Oxy button, and you put this on the content property, and in it you specify an action ID, like so. So we can bind the defined author actions to these button form controls. So now if I go back to my document and I refresh, we see that the add new list item action appears at the end of every list item. Now let's do what I've said we will do for the paragraph as well. We'll copy this other rule, and afterwards I will describe what it does. So this one matches on a paragraph. In this case, it uses the class attribute in data. And after, well, we can also write it. This is the proper way of writing selectors for data, but we can just put a P to make it simpler for this demonstration. And this time we use the button group form control. And here in the action IDs property, we give a comma separated enumeration of action IDs. Again, these IDs, these actions are the one defined inside your framework or document type, as we call it. And if we go to the document again, you'll notice that the paragraph has this plus button here. If we click it, then it presents a pop-up menu with these actions, and we can select these actions and work with them. Now these are quite important, these button form controls, this way of binding author actions in the document, because they make these actions very accessible. So we offer them in the precise content where they are intended to be used. You might say that the way of adding these actions, of binding them, can be quite verbose. And yes, you would be right. But luckily, we can make them more compact by using less. Less is a CSS extension that offers quite a few goodies. But in this case, we are interested in the less mixins. These mixins are like functions. They allow us to reuse CSS blocks. For example, such a mixin or function would be called paragraph, and in it we will put all those properties that make a paragraph look like it should. And whenever we want an element to look like a paragraph, instead of putting all these properties, of copying them and pasting them, we can just call this less mixin, and both a paragraph and a step will be rendered as a paragraph in this example. So the idea is that we can use less mixins for defining, for adding button form controls and button group form controls, for binding author actions. So how I'll do that, instead of doing this, I'll remove everything. The actions are gone. First, I will add an import here. This imports a less library that contains all these mixins. Actually, if you want to use this library, it is available in our built-in data framework. So you can take it and put it in your own framework and use it, like you'll see me using it. And now to add an action, we put this CSS rule. So you see, you say in a list item, we will call this .action mixin, and we give as a parameter the ID of the action that we want to put there. So here is the action. And for the paragraph actions, and in this case, you will better see how things are better, how more compact the CSS becomes. We just call this action group mixin with the IDs of the actions that should be presented. Again, we go to the topic, and here is the button group phone controls with our author actions, right? So yeah, that's quite interesting. Another question that you might ask yourself is, what can you do if the default operations are not enough? For example, if you have a complex scenario in which all these built-in operations don't fulfill. Well, there are two solutions. The first one would be to chain multiple actions by using a special operation named execute multiple actions operation. And to demonstrate, I'll take this use case of fixing up an image. And by fixing up an image, I mean that I should set an attribute, the placement attribute, to break, and insert an alt element if one doesn't exist, of course. If we take a look at some of the default operations, we see that the operations that can be of help are the change attribute operation to add the placement attribute, and the insert fragment operation that inserts this one we will use to insert the alt element. So the idea is that we will create an author action that uses this change attribute operation, and a second author action using this other operation, and then a third action that will execute in a sequence the first two actions. So let's do just that. Again, we edit our framework on the Actions tab, and we'll add a new action. We'll say this one, it's a fix or placement. The same name. We won't give it any icons because it won't be added anywhere. As an operation, we select this execute multiple actions operation. And, oh, sorry. This one is the change attribute operation. And the name of the attribute is placement. The value is break. The second action is the one that fixes the alt attribute element. Let's put an activation expat here because an image might already have an alt element. So in this case, we don't want to put another one, right? So we'll say if I'm in an image that doesn't already have an alt element, that's when this operation will activate. The operation is insert fragment operation. The fragment to be inserted is an alt element with some text in it, maybe. And the insert location is this self image. We can put the same expat expression here. Okay. And now the third action, which will be the fix image. Oops. This one we will put it on the toolbar, so let's put an icon for it as well. And this is the one that uses the execute multiple action operation. And the IDs of the actions to execute is fix placement and fix alt. Okay. Again, this is good to put an activation XPath. This should only activate when I'm in an image. Okay. Let's search for the action. It's this one, fix image. Let's put it here before our example action. And at the bottom here, I have such an image that needs fixing. So if I'm outside, say in a paragraph, this action is disabled because it has no active operation. But if I go in an image, then it activates, and when I click it, it inserts this alternate text and also sets the placement attribute to break. I can now put something else maybe. So both operations were executed. The second option that you have when the default operations are not enough is to use a scripting language to implement this custom use case. And you can use either XSLT through an XSLT operation, XQuery or XQuery update, or JavaScript. Through the JavaScript, you have access to our Java-based API. And if actually here I have a link, I'll go over it so you see it. In this GitHub repository, you'll see multiple examples of JavaScript operations that you can use as starting point for various other use cases. But in this presentation, because we don't have that much time, I will focus on the first two options. So as an option for XSLT, let's convert as a use case, let's convert a definition list to a table. A definition list looks something like this. So it has definition list entries. This is with a term and a description. Let's add another one. So let's convert such a definition list to a two-column table. So we need, of course, we need an XSLT. And again, to speed things up, I have created this XSLT here in my framework. And it looks like this. So here at the beginning, we have the classic copy template from XSLT that just copies elements and nodes. And Here we have another template that matches on the definition list and generates a table instead of the definition list. After which it continues to apply templates. We have a template that matches on definition list entries and generates rows instead. One that matches on definition term and definition description and generates entries. To use this XSLT, again, we'll go to Options, Preferences, and because we already have an action that inserts a table, let's use this action, but change it a bit so that when I have selected a definition list, it will convert it instead of inserting a new table. We go to the Actions table again, but this time we search for the insert table. Is this one over here? So let's edit it. We see that it has just one operation here, but we'll add a new one from here. This one is the second, but we will increase its priority because the way this operation gets executed is the first one whose activation XPath returns true gets executed. The other ones don't. So from all the operations from within an action, the first one whose activation XPath triggers gets executed. That's why we needed to chain multiple actions in our previous use case. So in this case, we will say if a definition list is selected in the XPath. For that, we will use an XPath extension function that we have, oxy current selected element, and this function returns the current selected element if one is indeed selected or nothing. And we will put a predicate here and say this current selected element should be a definition list. When this triggers, the operation that gets executed is an XSLT operation. The source, the fragment that will be processed by the XSLT, is given by the same XPath expression, the fully selected definition list element. The target, the element that will be replaced, is the same definition list. And the script is where we will put the path to our XSLT. Scripts convert DL table, like so. In case I've missed mentioning it, you'll notice that each operation has a number of arguments that control the way this operation is executed and how it performs. Okay, let's put, we don't need it because the table action is already in the toolbar. So now if I select this definition list and I click on the insert a table, it has converted the definition list to a 2-column table, term 1, description 1, and so on. If I'm somewhere else and I click the same action, it will go with the second operation and will insert a new table. But some of you might say, why would you want to convert a nice semantic element like a definition list to a generic one like a table is? And of course, you are right. So to make amends, I will create another action that goes the other way around. So from this table, we will generate a definition list. But this time, instead of using XSLT, we'll use XQuery. This is the XQuery that will do just that. It's a lot more compact than the XSLT, and it just generates the definition list. Then it iterates over the rows in the table and generates the proper definition list markup. Let's go to options, preferences, to add a new action. We don't have a definition list action, so we'll have to create one. Definition list. We'll put an icon to it as well. The operation is XQuery operation. Let's put the activation XPath as well. So we'll say if the current selected element is a table, again, the source will be this particular table, the target, what we replace, the same table, and the script is inside framework, scripts, convert this time table to dl.xqi. And okay. And let's add it to in the toolbar. And now let's test it. So if we select the table, the action activates, and when we click it, we have our nice semantic definition list back. So the bottom line would be that XSLT and XQuery are quite powerful. And these operations that execute XSLT and XQuery allow you to do all sorts of things in the document to manipulate it in any way you might need. So let's talk a bit about building these author actions. You've seen me building them, creating them using the graphical user interface, which is quite expressive, easy to use, but it has one drawback, and that would be that every time I notice, so I test my action, and I notice that it doesn't quite work the way I want it to work. In this case, I need to go all the way back through all these dialogues to the action and make a small change, and then go back to the document and test it, and maybe it's not perfect yet. So it's this going back and forth between the configuration dialog and the editor to test the action. To help people with this predicament, we've added the possibility to define author actions in their own files, so in external files. As an use case to demonstrate this, let's create an action to insert a beta section element. To do that, I'll click New here on the toolbar, and I will use this author action template. And we see an author action being expressed in an XML vocabulary. At the beginning, we see a comment that tells us where to save this action so that it is automatically picked up by Oxygen. We will save it inside this external author actions directory. So let's save it, Control S. Frameworks, and it's here. Let's say it's better section.xml. And let's take a look at it. We see it has that ID, but let's change it to better section. The name, it's a better section. It inserts a new section, and it has just one operation. It inserts a fragment. It's the default operation because it says here true. And the fragment, let's change a bit the fragment. Let's put a title here, say better, and better section maybe. And this is the paragraph, but because it's a better section, let's put not one, but 2 paragraphs in it, like so. Now, if I go to Options Preferences, I'll just have to go once here in the configuration, and you'll notice that this add better section action was automatically picked up by Oxygen. We see it here. So now we can maybe put it in the toolbar, like so. And if we go here, you will see it on the toolbar. I didn't give it an icon. That's why we see this text instead, the name of the action, but let's focus on its functionality instead. So if I click it, it will insert this beta section. But now let's assume that I also want, if I'm in a section that has only one paragraph, like this one has, I want to put the second paragraph instead of inserting an entire new section. To do that, I'll go to the file where this action is defined and put a new operation. So this one will be also an insert fragment operation. You'll notice that we see in the content completion these operations, the available operations. This operation gets activated when we have only one paragraph. How we write this? Well, we say ancestor or self. It's a section that has just one paragraph in it. When this happens, the operation will be executed, and as arguments, we say that the fragment is just a P element in this case. Let's give it second paragraph. And we also need to tell it where to insert it. So the insert location is given by the same, well, not the same, but it'll be this one. So we'll say we wanted the second paragraph to be inserted after the first paragraph, right? Because it has only one paragraph. And with this insert position argument, we can tell it to put it after the existing paragraph. So now we save it. We just go back to our document. And if we click the action again, we see that this second paragraph was inserted. If I go outside this section and click it, it will insert an entire new section. So you see, it's a lot easier to develop these author actions because I work here in this file in which the action is defined, and then to test it, I just switch to the document. Now, because you probably have a lot of actions already defined in your framework, which are not external, if you want to export them, you can. You just go to the actions table again, you select the actions, and then you just click export. And now if we refresh here, you'll notice that a file was created for each action that I had first defined internally in the framework. So again, the second gain that I have if I define actions like that is that if I want them in a second framework, I can just copy these files to the second framework directory, and they will be automatically loaded by Oxygen. And with that, thank you for bearing with me up until the end. Thank you very much, and please ask me questions.
Thank you, Alex, and thanks to everyone for attending and for asking questions during our presentation. Alex, let's go through the list of questions and try to offer the people some answers. First question. Is it possible to only show valid elements for the current cursor location?
Yes, it is. If you go to Options, Preferences, and you write here schema aware, you'll see this option here, and in it there's an entry here to show. Okay, maybe we can just show possible. Here. So here we have in the content completion, show all possible elements, you see, and by default is enabled because like I've told you, Oxygen handles the finding of a correct position where to insert it. But if you don't want to see them, you just deselect this and then you'll see just the elements that are valid at that particular location.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the next questions. Next question, is there a performance hit for using inline actions like a pop-up menu at a certain size or for a certain number of actions?
Well, with great power comes also great responsibility, I would say. It depends. It depends on the size of the document. It depends on the complexity of the CSSs. But so far, we haven't noticed any bottlenecks. Of course, if at some point, if you put too many actions in those button groups, then it might be more cumbersome for someone to pinpoint a particular action in it, you know, so but try and give it a try. We personally don't know of any performance bottlenecks.
Will all of the actions that you presented work with WebAuthor too?
Yes. I think some of these actions have a yes, they will.
Okay.
Well, some of them, of course, it depends from what operation you use. For example, this operation that is this action that inserts a table, so it presents this dialog. So this operation that it is an operation, an insert table operation, and it uses, so this only works in the desktop because obviously it needs to use Java Swing to create this this dialogue and to get interaction. So if it needs user interaction, then you can't use use it the same way in the web author. But if it just inserts fragments or manipulates the document, then they are perfectly suited for the web author as well.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the next question that says, are these customizations automatically saved when I upgrade, or do I have to manually save them?
Well, these customizations will be built in your framework. The way you can do them, I'll go here again. So there are two ways to make this customization. So you can just edit the framework, the document type, and make these changes. If you do that, when you upgrade to a new Oxygen version, you'll need to merge what comes new with these changes that you've performed. So you need to reapply the changes because the built-in data framework might have evolved as well. So a better approach would be to click extend. This is actually what I did with my framework. So if you look here, it says that it is an extension of the built-in data framework. And when you do that, all your customization will be like an additional layer that applies over the base framework, in this case, data. And what you gain is that when you upgrade to a new Oxygen versions, your customization will apply automatically, so you won't have to do anything.
Good question is the next one. Is it possible to set the path to the XSLT files to be external to the project?
Well, we have a number of editor variables available there. Let's have a look. So the idea is that you can't put, sorry, where's the script? Oops, I'm editing the wrong framework. Right, so this path, you're referring to this path. So you can use maybe some of these editor variables can help you, like project directory or Oxygen install directory, or if not, I think if you put here an URL or an URI, I think we pass them through the catalog mappings. So that's another way through which you can catch that particular URL and map it to another location of the XSLT. But it is a good practice to put these style sheets inside the framework, I would say.
We got a user that told us that we are talking about HTTP URLs rather than file references.
Have I?
No, he was referring to HTTP URLs.
Oh,
when talking about external references.
Well, here you can put, so this actually expands to an URL because $framework is an URL. If we look here, it says it is the current framework directory URL. So we work with URLs. So if you want, you can just put a URL here and put the resource on anywhere.
Okay. Another question says.
But again, when just one more thing, if these resources are remote, are somewhere on a server or whatnot, then when Oxygen goes to get them, you might introduce performance bottlenecks, because it might take a while to read them and so on. So again, I would say it's a better approach to have your resources bundled in the framework, if that's possible.
Thank you, Alex. Another question. Can you remove some of the default author actions from the user interface?
Yes, of course. Everything is configurable. So if we go here in the document type edit dialog, in the toolbar, you see what we have here currently added in the toolbar. So we can remove all of these or a subset of these. And the same can be done for the menu or the contextual menu and so on. And besides that, if you want to further simplify the layout, there is this configure toolbar action here, and you can use it to further hide things from the toolbar. And you can also hide views, and afterwards you go to Window, Export Layout, and you'll get a layout file with this customization. And everyone that uses this layout file will have this simplified interface that you've created. And how to impose the layout, you might ask, well, is this preference page here? It might be saved in project options. So when the user loads the project, the Oxygen project, the layout, the simplified layout will automatically be loaded. Or an Oxygen plugin can also impose a layout, but there are various options.
And the final question that we received in our chat box, is there any way to create an action that calls a third-party application for a selected fragment, for instance, to open a selected image in Photoshop?
Mm-hmm. Well, not sure of if I understand the use case, but for example, we have an option, an operation that so you would want to start an external application and then get something from it and maybe insert it in the document.
May I?
Yeah, sure, George.
Yeah, so that is surely possible, and actually one of our users created such an action, and there is Marcus Wiedenmeyer. He created and posted on YouTube video recording with triggering, for instance, having an image in data, and then he created a custom action that triggered an SVG via Inkscape. And he started that with that image as background with an SVG, and then you can crop the image, for instance, add some labels, and at the end, when Inkscape is closed and you save the image, the change, and you close Inkscape, then the action replaces the image with that SVG. So basically, you just have, let's say, some screenshots of the application, and then with that action, you can replace them with an SVG that will crop and label things on that screenshot or does some other processing on that image. So that's surely possible.
Right.
Yes.
So I was thinking if this use case is possible with the built-in operations, but
Maybe
it doesn't
not.
look like. Yes. So maybe yeah, either a custom operation that uses our Java API, like George said, or maybe a JavaScript, a JS operation, a JavaScript operation that also has access to this to our Java API.
Well, Alex, I lied to you. We have another question that we just received. For sharing custom actions between users, is it best to save it in the project file, or everyone must update their framework directory?
Well, again, it depends on how you have your framework, but I think the framework, chances are you have an external framework. So the framework is in a directory, like I have it here in my project. So in my project here, I have a directory where this framework is saved, and the user doesn't have to do anything, because if we take a look inside options preferences, you see here that I have an additional frameworks location saved in the project options, and it's inside the project directory /frameworks. So every time the user opens this particular project, it will automatically have the updated framework.
Thank you, Alex. Well, we just went through all of the questions, and big thank you to all of you for being this involved in Alex's presentation. I will quickly take control, because before going, I just want to remind you that Alex's webinar represented the start of this weekly series of live webinars, and it will be continued next Wednesday with working with data in Oxygen, basic profiling, and reuse strategies, where we will cover some of the most important concepts of data profiling and content references. Also, the next one will be on October 14th, Introduction to XSLT using Oxygen XML editor, where we will learn how to process XML documents with a killer combination of XSLT and Oxygen, the tool that is most suited for this job. On October 21, we will witness the start of another mini-series, Transforming HTML Documents to PDF, Part 1, Basic CSS Layout, where you will learn a basic understanding of the CSS layout to help you to have a better understanding of PDF publishing. Also, be assured that there will be no need for you to have any CSS background. And on October 28th, we will have the Explore Web Author Beyond the Technical Documentation webinar. And make sure to check our events page for more information on these webinars, and also to register. With this being said, I want to thank Alex first for presenting, and to all of you for attending our event. Thank you, Alex. So see you next week at the same day and the same time. Until then, bye-bye.